Hey everyone, and welcome back to the 12 Days of ChrisBondmas. If you're interested in video game reviews with perfect review scores, you'd be better off watching some other review. In this review, not only is there no perfect review score, but there's no perfect beginning and few perfect things in the middle. For today, we're looking at a series of unfortunate events, released alongside the feature film back in 2004. This game is what you call a movie tie-in, a term here which means made cheaply and quickly in hopes of brandishing a quick profit for the studio. My name is Chris Bond, and it's my solemn duty to review this game and tell you whether or not it's worth your time. And quick heads up, I won't be narrating the whole review in that Snicket-esque style. One, because I'm not that creative, and two, you probably won't be able to tell whether I'm being serious or not. A Series of Unfortunate Events was a book series released from 1999 through 2006. It consisted of 13 books, and each one chronicles the lives of the unfortunate Baudelaire children. At the start of the series, the children are orphaned when a fire starts in their house and kills their parents. They're taken to live with a supposed relative by the name of Count Olaf, but it soon becomes apparent that Olaf is not a relative, but rather a scheming criminal who's interested in the enormous fortune left behind by their parents. Each book follows a similar structure. The Baudelaires are taken to a new guardian, Count Olaf appears in disguise, fooling everyone except the Baudelaires. He plots either to kill their guardian or remove them from their current guardian. The Baudelaires then expose Olaf at the 11th hour, and he escapes only to do it all over again in the next book. Well, at least until the end of the series. The last 3 books kind of played out a little differently. The series was unique for children's books, as they're written in the style of absurdist fiction, and despite being labeled as so-called children's books, there was a lot of dark themes running through them. The books were eventually adapted into a movie in 2004, like I said, which used the first 3 books as the basis for its plot. And I know what you're thinking, wait a minute, 3 books in 1 movie? I mean, that's insanity. But the books were kinda short. They only ran, I think, about maybe 100 to 200 pages, and the long-term goal of making 13 movies would have been insane. That would have taken years. And since you're dealing with child actors who age fast, it's probably not the best idea. You want to finish things up and move along. Although, it kind of makes me wonder, what if Harry Potter had done that? Interesting. The film was somewhat successful, and while a lot of the charm and style from the book was left out, there was a lot that felt true to the spirit of the book. A sequel was in development, but due to a ton of production issues, the series was put on hold multiple times, and by the time the series got back on track, the main child actors were way too old to continue. Thankfully, Netflix was able to secure the rights, and they adapted the entire series over the course of 3 seasons, with each book consisting of 2 episodes. The Netflix show is pretty spot on, and if you're a big fan of the book, you're going to love this adaptation. Unfortunately, the game we're looking at today is only based on the film, so sorry, we won't be able to see everything from the series. The plot of the game covers the events of the film, starting with the bad beginning, followed by the reptile room, and then the wide window, before coming back around and using the ending sections from the bad beginning. You'll visit Count Olaf's house, Justice Strauss's library, Uncle Monty's garden, along with the actual reptile room itself, and finally Damocles' docks and Curdle's cave. The game's plot covers all the major events from the film, and in a nice little addition, the game's cutscenes are narrated by Tim Curry, who might seem a little, weird casting, but he actually provided the narration to the audiobook, so nice. Though fair warning, the game's plot never really adds anything from the books, which seems like a bit of a misstep, especially when we consider how long this game is. We'll get to that. If you enjoyed the film, then you'll enjoy this game's take on it since it hits all the same story beats. The game is an exploration puzzle platform in which you control Violet and Klaus, and on the rare occasion, Sunny. Violet and Klaus explore the levels while Sunny is used inside scrolling 2.5D levels. The goal of each level changes, but the way you get to the end is always the same. The main aspect of gameplay is hunting down items in the environment to create inventions to help you complete your missions. For instance, in the first level, you have to deal with some rats in Count Olaf's house, so you search for parts to create an invention called the Brilliant Bopper to get rid of them. You also create the Fruit Flinger, which fires off fruit and is used to hit enemies and switches. The Baby Booster lets Sunny get a glide ability for her levels. The Steady Stilts lets Violet hit higher out-of-the-way switches, while the Levitating Loafers give Klaus a glide ability all of his own. Finding the items is easy in most cases. While some levels like Count Olaf's house require you to search different rooms to find them all, later levels like places in Uncle Monty's garden, all of the items are kind of in the same room within spitting distance. The other issue is that all of the items have little sparkles next to them cluing you into what you can pick up. However, if you don't need them, the Baudelaires will mention how they might need that later, wink wink, hint hint, remember this. So most levels work like this. You move around trying to pick up all the sparkly objects, only to learn that a bunch of what you're trying to pick up you can't yet. Then you find what you are looking for, you build the right invention, and then you learn that you need to build something else after that, so you backtrack to find the things you already tried to pick up without removing any more need for exploration. The levels also do a decent job of having you switch between Violet and Klaus. First, during the section based on the bad beginnings, you really only switch when you need a certain invention. Klaus gets the Brilliant Bopper while Violet gets the Fruit Flinger. However, during the section based on the reptile room, you get to do some exploring around Uncle Monty's house, and these areas split the two up with each playing through a small section and opening up the way for the other sibling to progress. And these areas were cool because it's not really about finding items here, but just making progress, like a sort of puzzle platformer. so you get to use all the inventions just to make progress. Also, a bit of a heads up, but some of the inventions are used way more than others by the endgame. A cool little addition is how you make the inventions. You get to attach each part of the invention together, and while this is a short little mini-game, it's interesting if a tad simplistic. You get to rotate the object and find the spot where you can attach the next part. And while that sounds kind of complex, it really isn't. You move the thing at most once or twice in any given direction, you wait for the little X to pop up, and then you move on. I like this idea since Violet is always inventing things in the books, and this little attempt to emulate that is welcome enough, even though it's kind of over before you know it. Violet and Klaus get most of the playtime, like I said, though Sunny gets a handful of levels. These levels have her sliding down a long slide in which I feel the pain every time she takes a jump. She's a baby, for Christ's sake. The bones! The other Sunny levels are straight platforming stages where you move left to right and occasionally move things around to make platforms. The Sunny sections act as nice little breaks from the main gameplay loop with Violet and Klaus. You also encounter several of Count Olaf's henchmen as you make your way through the levels, and they act as your boss fights. However, they're all painfully easy and some drag on for ages. They all invoke the boring design loop of you hit them, they do their little attack, then they get dizzy, and you take your free hit, and you do it all over again. The only thing you really do here is move away to avoid the incoming attack, and that's it. But some of the later fights give the bosses a lot more health, so it takes way more than 3 hits, and since the loop never changes, it just drags. Like, take this last fight against the Hookhand Man. He goes into these little boxes and drops things from the ceiling, and then throws out barrels before he permanently sticks his head out, and then you can land a hit on him. But this loop never adds anything. Nope, stuff just from the ceiling lasts longer, and he throws more barrels, and it just drags on. And don't get me started on the final battle where you have to button mash over and over shooting all the henchmen, and this took up way too much time. It was padding to the nth degree. So now you're probably thinking, okay Chris, so the game throws you in each level based on an area from the film, and the goal is to find items, build an invention to help you get more items, to build more things before the section ends off with a crappy boss fight. Well, you would be right only in 2/3 of the game. Halfway through playing the Reptile Room section, I thought I had the rest of the game figured out. I assumed that there would be more open levels, using all the inventions to make progress rather than finding the things to make more inventions. So I kind of expected the wide window section to play out similarly, only to find it doesn't. At this point, the nuts and bolts of the design just go clean out the wide window, as it were. In fact, it feels like the developers either ran out of creative juice here, or they were hitting their deadline, because this section just gave up. The narration of the section quickly sums up that the Baudelaires arrived at Aunt Josephine's house, and how they encountered Olaf again. Josephine then heads back to her place with Olaf, leaving the Baudelaires to get things on a shopping list. So now you're left at Damocles' dock to find the items, and I thought, okay, so I'm gonna have to go into the shops and probably do some sort of weird puzzly platforming section in each store to find the items. It was similarly done in, Chamber of Secrets, where you had to go find Ginny's school supplies in Diagon Alley shops. I figured it was something like that. You know, these games are a few years apart, but copying, it's fine. Only to then realize that was not the case. Instead, half the stores are closed, and when you reach one that is opened, instead one of Count Olaf's henchmen pokes their head out the door, and you battle them. And then you get one of the items. So this whole area is just boss fights. You know, the one thing the game hasn't been excelling at right now? They made a whole section just for that. Also, at the end of this section, you upgrade the flute frigate to now shoot peppermints, and the game puts you in a first-person perspective to engage in a shooting gallery. And while it's nice to see something different at this hour in the game, it doesn't really last, because all you do is mash the fire button over and over and quickly try to dispatch all of the enemies. And I'm pretty sure you can't kill these crabs easily. You need to have full health in this section and not miss, because I, honest to God, don't know how you get rid of these crabs. I had to dumb luck it. After you return to Josephine's house, which is already falling apart, you get to play as Violet and Klaus in short platforming sections, though Klaus kind of gets the short end of the stick here, because his section is just one long room, while Violet gets several rooms to go through. Then after this we reached Curdle Cave, and I was like, is this it? The section's over already? Like, what happened to the design we had going in the first 2/3 of the game? Well, Josephine is about to leave when she mentions that she left her books further in the cave and she won't leave without them. So then I was like, okay, I see where this is going. This is going to be the final big platforming exploration level. I'm going to probably have to use all my gadgets to get to the end of the cave, and it's going to be fun. But take a wild friggin' guess what happens. So you go over to the elevator here, and you reach the bottom, and you'll see some enemy crabs, and the books all within this one little room, and you don't even have to fight the crabs, nor does a giant enemy crab show up. Nope. You just stroll over to the books, grab them, go back to the elevator, give them to Aunt Josephine, and that's it. Sure, you get one more first-person shooting section while you're back on the boat ride to shore, but that's the end of the wide window section. I was so confused at what happened here. It's like the game has a nice groove to the design. There are open levels that you explore, and you use all the inventions to make progress. It's a good flow. I mean, this isn't the most taxing or inventive design, but it was enjoyable. I liked it. But then it just all evaporates when you reach this section. It's like they added the first-person shooting sections as a new thing, but why did they have to change the rest of the design? Like, why couldn't Curdled Cave be the final big level? I know in the film they spent like 2 minutes in the cave, but come on, they already made a plot point of Josephine's books being down there, so what's the harm of adding something else? Also, the reptile room section added all the areas outside of the house, and the film never showed that, so I don't get what happened here. In addition to the main quest line, you can find puzzle pieces around each level, and each time you collect 25, you can pause the game and check the secret report to see a picture of something in the level that you have to now find. Finding the object in the picture gets you a crate to unlock, which gives you a bonus feature back in the main menus, although these bonus features are just stills from the movie or behind the scenes of making the game. But yeah, other than that puzzle piece thing, there's nothing else to do. And the game is short, it takes around 3 to 4 hours, and there's absolutely no reason to come back. Not helping that runtime is that the game has no difficulty. There's no options for difficulty to select, there's no live system, you die and the game just resets you. And the game frequently asks you to save after you do the smallest thing. Seriously, you'll enter an area, it'll ask you to save. Which, okay, makes sense. Then you'll find all the items for something in the same small area, and it'll ask you to save again. Not that you'll die all that much, since the game is fairly easy. It's a shame, because honestly, I enjoyed this game a lot. It's really simple to be sure, but fun to play. It just made me all more pissed off with how the last third of the game was handled. It's like, if they just designed the wide window section similar to the rest of the game, there could have probably been at least another hour or two to enjoy. Presentation-wise, things are really nice. All the areas are nicely replicated from the film, and the original areas fit in perfect with the rest of the design. The frame rate kinda drops in cutscenes and chugs a little, but thankfully it never happens really in gameplay. The character models are nicely detailed, though the facial expressions can sometimes seem a tad unnatural. What are you gonna do? The voice cast is great since they actually got Emily Browning, Liam Aiken, and Jim Carrey to reprise their roles, which is pretty impressive. The soundtrack was also really nice, invoking feelings of eeriness and dread. And sure enough, after I finished and I went to go look up who did the music, I was actually not surprised to find Jeremy Soule. If you don't remember, he did work on the early Harry Potter games, and his work there was always enchanting, and while the music here sounds a little similar, bordering on familiar, it's kinda got its own style. It works. Overall, A Series of Unfortunate Events is a decent movie-based tie-in. While the game is criminally short and easy, it was still fun to play. Aside from the boss fights which drag on, the rest of the game was fairly enjoyable. I liked exploring all the areas and finding inventions and then using them. The reptile room section was the best example of showing off the design of this game in its best light. Seriously, this area just clicked really well for me. The switching between Klaus and Violet and using all their inventions to make progress worked brilliantly. Unfortunately, it seems like time constraints or just a strange drop in the creative streak ruins the last third of the game, in which it relies too heavily on gimmicky mini-games and boss fights, which, like I said, not exactly the game's strongest suit. If you're a fan of the movie and you like the series, then this is a decent pickup, especially when you consider the price you might be able to find it for nowadays. Well, come back tomorrow as the 12 Days of ChrisBondmas continues. Thanks for watching.